Did Louis Vuitton actually hated fake bags? This might be the longest battle a fashion house have against counterfeit products. Stick to this video to learn more about the brand from Louis himself to Nicolas Ghesqui and Pharrell Williams. Louis Vuitton is a gigantic and perhaps one of the most famous of fashion houses. You probably have heard of it, you may love it, maybe you remember the monogram and you don't love it, but surely it's the house that everybody recognizes. Maybe it's because it has the most often copied bags, despite their efforts throughout centuries. I'm not gonna spill the tea just yet on the Louis Vuitton fakes, but you see dozens and dozens of them out there. What you also see in dozens is articles and videos, clickbait videos about how this poor homeless boy became this super rich man and built this mega brand. Although most of those are mere exaggerations, there is poverty, intrigue, and power games and greed to be revealed. Louis Vuitton was born on August 4, 1821 in Arnault, France, near the border with Switzerland. His mother was a hat maker and his father was a farmer. France back then had a leader with quite a big ambition, Napoleon. At the time, he was busy going to war far more often than he cared to bathe. Many peasants went hungry and they lived in poverty, so Louis Vuitton had to work since he was 5 years old. His parents died because sod's law, and he had to grow up with a godmother that she was evil, like Disney type of evil, so he decided to flee home and travel by himself to Paris, by foot, to find a job at the age of 13. I don't know which sentence sounds more crazy for today's standards. 3 years later, in 1837, at the age of 16, he arrived in Paris. We're not sure what happened in those 3 years, as back then the tracking services and the GPS was not even a thing, it has not been discovered yet. The year is 1830, it's not like he was posting Instagram stories about what he was doing. Google say it's a 4-day walk. So to make it 3 years, I assume he made a couple of stops. Paris was in the midst of an industrial revolution under Louis Philippe I, and Vuitton found a trunk maker and asked him if he can work for him. His name was Monsieur Maréchal. Trunks were very common at the time for Parisians, as they often traveled on horses and the carriages, and they needed suitcases to put their clothes and their hats inside. Louis was really good at this job. He made the strongest trunks according to the needs of the time, because as you understand, the infrastructure of Paris was less than ideal. They were cart roads, dirt and stones, or porters chucking them on the ground. They had to be quite durable. So while he works for Monsieur Maréchal, he makes noble and princely friends. You see, since the ancient times, the right networking is the most important thing if you want to be someone. In the courts of the nobles of the time, his name carried weight, and he was commissioned to create trunks for the carriage of the Empress Eugenia, the wife of Napoleon III. Empresses were the influencers of their time. It was perceived as a sign of very high status to buy trunks from the same place that Her Highness buys her trunks. So he got a lot of customers, and until 1853, when she named him the governor's official chess maker, he was helping him to open his own brands. I'm sure that there were other customers that financially helped out, but he set up his first shop in Forte de Capuchin. He had learned how to make trunks for custom carriages and how they should be made. Let me remind you that we're talking about the age where there was no mass production of carriages. It wasn't a Toyota Yaris that you can make 50 spoilers that fit all cars and you just produce 50 and you... The trunks required elaborate craftsmanship because these trunks were made of leather. You couldn't leave them in the stables or in storage sheds outdoors. It was not wise for customers to do that. So usually they used these high quality chests for storage inside the house. So the prettier the trunk, the more desirable, as you would also have it as a decor piece in your place. Business was thriving and technology was advancing just as fast. Steamboats and steam trains were on the rise, quickly becoming the go-to modes of transportation. Railways were taking over, pushing horse-drawn carriages into the past as more and more people embraced the speed and the convenience of the train travel. In 1957, Louis Vuitton decided to adapt. He created his most important piece of work, the steam trunk, which was named as such to promote the use of it in steamships. The old trunks had rounded tops, as this shape allows the rainwater to flow from the carriage to avoid the damage. Since customers are now using them on a train or a ship, the steam trunk had a flap top so they could be stacked. With trains that so many people used, storing a trunk with curvature was not practical at all. Many rich people used the old curved ones as they demanded theirs to go on top of the stack. Because rich. The trunks had steel borders covered in leather and iodine, handles made of steel and brass, and it was back then when Louis introduced the new waterproof canvas fabric instead of the usual leather. This new groundbreaking canvas fabric was named Triana, after the Grand and Petit Trianon, which were small houses in the garden of Versailles, and perhaps he did it as a marketing tactic to associated the then unknown material with luxury and kingship. The brand became even more successful because of this idea, and Louis and his family set up an atelier in Anziers, which is still in use to this day and is located just outside of Paris. In 1854, he also married the 17-year-old Clémente Émilie Parliot. In 1957, they had their only child, George Vuitton, and the brand's popularity continued to soar until the start of the Franco-Prussian War. Now, Napoleon had a beef with Prussia, a kingdom within the German Empire. He did not want Prussia to gain control over Spain, and the countries began to quarrel. Prussia was stronger and eventually invaded Paris, where it besieged the city for over 4 months, trapping the Vuittons in Paris. Upon returning to the atelier, they discovered it has been looting. When war, with all the poverty and the hunger and the death, these lootings were very common. They discovered that the studio had been destroyed and all the tools and materials and machines vanished into thin air. Louis did not waste any time. He quickly set up a new shop and in 1872 introduced a new style of beige chest with red stripes. It is a new modern design, but he was also thinking that this would make the chest recognizable and authentic, very hard to copy. That was his first idea. Eventually, the business began to recover and his son George began to take his place in the business. In 1886, George Vuitton revolutionized luggage security by inventing a groundbreaking lock system for trunks. The suitcases of Louis Vuitton were a symbol of luxury, and as a result, the best target for thieves. To combat this, George designed an innovative single lock mechanism featuring 2 spring-loaded tongues that firmly secured the key, making it nearly impossible to pick. His lock was so effective that he famously challenged the escaped artist Harry Houdini to break free from it, though Houdini declined. The design was patented and remains in use to this day, a testament to its ingenuity. Just 2 years later, in 1888, George introduced the now iconic damier motif to distinguish genuine Louis Vuitton trunks from imitation. This signature sketchboard pattern, instantly recognizable worldwide, became a defining symbol of the brand's heritage and craftsmanship. Today, we see it in many colors, but the classics are the warm medium brown and the chocolate brown or white with beige for the summer. George decided to get out of the borders of France after so many wars and so many conflicts. He probably thought to himself, I can't have another emperor start another war and destroy everything that I've built. So he opens a store in London. Now, of course, every single thing that has a label made in France becomes an instant hit in the UK. Even doorknobs. So the trunks became a bestseller and they were selling all over Europe, and they traveled even further out to Asia and Japan. So in 1893, he decided to go to America with his trunks to showcase them at a world exhibition of leather goods. Our boy wanted international following, and we don't blame him for it. He was ambitious. Then comes the glorious 1897. The distribution of the first fake damier chest started appearing to the markets. I'm exhausted already. I reckon if he knew that he would be facing the same problem for 150 years, he wouldn't even try to stop them at this point. So in an effort to stop the competition from copying him, he makes the most recognized logo in fashion, the Louis Vuitton's monogram. Since George created the monogram, you would wonder, why don't we have a GV and we have an LV? His dad had died of cancer 5 years earlier. It is said that George wanted to pay a tribute to his father and incorporate his legacy into the brand, which is why we see this crossed LV. And I think that's super, super sweet. The shape, though, was far more mysterious. Many believe that these resemble flowers. Some say it was inspired by the architecture of the old atelier, of the family home. Others say they were flowers from the tiles in the family's kitchen. There are those as well who believe that it was inspired by a European obsession with Japanese art and aesthetics during the Victorian era, known as Japanism. It's one of the most powerful marketing tools this world has ever seen. So it doesn't really matter. Louis Vuitton stands for luxury, and he made sure everybody knows it. Technology spikes again, and slowly and steadily cars were becoming more common among the rich. George was obsessed with making top trunks, today's top boxes for cars. He even made his own car that would fit the trunk box perfectly. And this trunk box was big. You could carry all your life's regrets in that trunk. He absolutely loved his cars. The year is 1901, and until that point, Louis Vuitton as a brand was producing only trunks. So he thought, what not experiment a bit with bags? So he created a basic suitcase. It was called the steamer bag. He wasn't very creative with the names, but it was basically a chest with a handle on top. Little by little, the world was becoming more and more fashionable, so were the bags. The first one was inspired by the American mail bag, which makes sense because George had done an extensive tour of America. As a consequence, fans of the brand began to recognize the logo that had been around for more than 90 years, so they knew that LV has bags now. In 1930, they launched the bag that still retains popularity today, the Keepel. It was actually introduced by George's son, Gaston. Gaston understood that the travel needs of modern people had changed again because we have a new century. People traveled longer distances and they don't need these big chunky suitcases anymore. They want something softer, something more flexible in fabric. In the same year, there was another iconic invention, the Speedy bag, originally called Express bag. It's still popular today, and by 1934, again, they did another signature bag introduced by Gaston, originally called the Square bag, but now it's known as Alma. Fun fact, Alma was specially commissioned in 1925 by Gabrielle Coco Chanel. It remains today as an all-time classic option. If you decide to invest in it, probably your children will still use it. The quality of leather and canvas in Louis Vuitton has dropped a little bit, but design-wise, your kids will love it. It's a timeless option. And this is where the cheerful story ends and it becomes a little bit dark and grim. George died in 1936, leaving his legacy to his sons Gaston, Jean-Pierre, and Marcel. Gaston, as the oldest child, he was in control of Louis Vuitton when World War II began. He collaborated with the Vichy regime, which was a puppet government under the control of Nazi Germany. According to the documents obtained by Stephanie Bonvicini, author of Louis Vuitton, a French saga, Gaston told his son Henry to establish ties with the Vichy regime to keep the business running. To be fair, he was not alone. Pretty much every big house did it. Coco Chanel had an affair with a Nazi soldier, eventually undertook espionage missions for the Germans. Elsa Schiaparelli had close ties to many people in the Vichy regime, and while he was not a collaborator, Cristobal Balenciaga didn't even seem to care that there was this war going on, that these atrocities happened. Pretty much exactly what happened in 2024. In general, the fashion world, as now, it is not very interested in warfare, famine, sinking economies, the depressing stuff. They mostly care about their own pockets, exactly like carrying an LVMH today. The Louis Vuitton company was allowed to remain open during the war, but undoubtedly it left a permanent mark on the monogram, because Nazis did really terrible things and people remember that. In 2004, a book was released, Louis Vuitton and Friends Saga, exposed many of the Nazi scandals, and the spokespersons from Louis Vuitton told us that we don't deny the facts, but unfortunately this author exaggerated the VT episodes. He's not in a position to know that, but anyway. The other important thing to note, and it's something we'll discuss in a moment, is that Vuitton family no longer has control over Louis Vuitton as a company. And while the brand's parent company, LVMH, certainly has its own shadows to deal with, it would be hard to blame the current owner, Bernard Arnault, for Gaston's and Henry's Nazi sympathies, although I understand if people decide to do so. After the war, as if nothing had happened, everyone continued to work, making changes to the marketing strategies as it was a period of prosperity and growth. So later in 1966, Henry introduced the Papillon bag, and in 1985 we have boutique openings all around the world. In the same year, they created the Epi bag. The Epi skin is the one with the textured grooves. In France, Epi means wheat, so its textured appearance inspired the name. In 1977, Henry Vuitton happily retired and his son-in-law took over the business. In 1987, the company made a decision that would transform them from a leading French luxury company to one of the world's largest conglomerates. It also marked the beginning of an end of Louis Vuitton as a family business. Henri Lacramière was an entrepreneur who had married Odile Vuitton, Louis Vuitton's great-granddaughter, and had planned to make the company even more famous globally. So they decided to merge with Moet and Hennessy, two leading spirit companies that had already merged, creating LVMH, a powerful luxury leather goods giant. It's a powerhouse. 3 years before this merge, Bernard Arnault had acquired Christian Dior and aimed to control LVMH using the Dior's perfume licensing for pressure. In 1987, during a period of controversy at Louis Vuitton, Bernard played a key role in ousting Moet's CEO. Shortly after that, he also got rid of Alain Chevalier off the board, ultimately seizing control of all the LVMH. In 1997, Bernard brought in an American designer, Marc Jacobs, to revive Louis Vuitton. Marc Jacobs' tenure at Louis Vuitton was full of creativity, innovation, and a redefinition of luxury. With his bold approach and ability to combine fashion with arts and with history, Jacobs established Louis Vuitton as one of the world's most influential fashion houses. His first collection, for Vuitton, was in autumn-winter 1998, and it was called Hidden Luxury. showcased a very minimalistic clothing line inspired by Vuitton's suitcases canvas, using very mild tones like a lot of beige and a lot of brown. He did use distinctive elements of Louis Vuitton's, like small buttons with logos on them and long cashmere cardigans. But his conception of luxury was hidden and very subtle, and it was an approach that actually surprised the board of directors in LVMH. Their sales were not exactly great, so the following year, in 1999, he was much bolder. He redefined the monogram and introduced the varnish collection. Now, varnish. Personally, you could not pay me to buy one, but the critics say it's iconic, and it brought back interest in pieces that were a bit forgotten. Now they are both forgotten and a bit glossy. I don't know, I just don't like them, but that's just my opinion. Marc popularized Louis Vuitton through incredibly iconic catwalks and collaborations, like the Stephen Sprouse graffiti bags, catwalks like the Nurses in 2007, the Nine Porters in 2011, and the very first collection collaboration with Yayoi Kusama. This brought a very new and very American air to the brand, and Marc Jacobs, of course, is gonna be his own episode because he totally deserves it. The next chapter is Nicolas Ghesqui. He's hired to replace Marc Jacobs as an artistic director of the women's wear collection, presenting his first collection during Paris Fashion Week in March 2014. Coming from a more experimental house like Balenciaga, Ghesqui seeks to modernize and push the boundaries of the established aesthetic of Louis Vuitton. He teamed up with Darren Spaziani, appointed to lead the expansion of the brand's accessories collection. Always check who's making the accessories in the brands you love. From the Petite Malay bag to the Desert Fantasy collection, Ghesqui has been the backbone of Louis Vuitton, and he will obviously become his own episode because I have mad respect for this designer. As a man, as a fashion figure, I absolutely love Nicolas Ghesqui. From Marc Jacobs' years of skates and tricks and confetti on the catwalks, Ghesqui focused strictly on the design of the clothes, the craftsmanship, the collections, but they were not meant to be loud or go viral. They attracted a different audience. They aren't meant for Instagram, they were made for real life. It was a very expensive brand he had on his hand, and he used strategic partnerships like the second Kusama collaboration to make it relevant and create a buzz without doing overly theatrical catwalks and exaggerations. For the year 2024, he celebrated 10-year anniversary with the house. This event touched a soft spot for him, so he had the same printouts as on his very first collection in the front rows. He had his name printed with a thank you card with the same font and the same print paper as the first time. It was lovely, very, very touching. What about menswear, I hear you ask? Nobody's ever asking about menswear. In 2018, Louis Vuitton made history. The appointment of Virgil Abloh as the men's artistic director wasn't just a shift in creative direction. It was a seismic moment for fashion. Virgil was the first Black designer to lead the French fashion luxury house. He brought his unique blend of streetwear with high fashion and cultural commentary to redefine what luxury means for the new generations. His debut collection was Spring-Summer 2019, and it did set a tone. A rainbow-hued runway, a celebration of diversity, and a reimagining of classic Vuitton codes through the lens of youth culture and streetwear. Over the next 3 years, Virgil's influence was undeniable. The groundbreaking collaboration with Nike and the $1 million auction of his LV trainer sneakers, as well as his futuristic spin on tailoring and the deeply personal references to his Guinean heritage. His tenure was a masterclass in adaptability, but beyond the clothes, Virgil's Vuitton was a movement, an inclusive vision that welcomed skaters, hip-hop artists, everyone, the outsiders, into the world of high fashion. His final collection unveiled after his death in 2021. It was a poignant farewell, a dreamlike fusion of the past, present, and the future that cemented his legacy as one of the most transformative designers of his time. I will not say much more because he also deserves his own episode. In 2023, LV replaced Virgil with Pharrell Williams, the rapper, as a menswear creative director on the grounds that the brand wants to give a platform for artists beyond fashion to show their own aesthetic. I think that's part of the company's marketing strategy, but as a person who sees fashion as a valuable and respectable art, I don't see how innovation and new exceptional ideas will come from people who are not dedicated to their art. Although I appreciate that everyone really has its own path in life, for me, every designer, whether male or female, spends some time in the messy world of fashion, learning from somebody else, working from different designers, and then they open their own house, they take over a brand. Of course, everyone has its own path, but it has been proven in many arts that you can't just suddenly become a GOAT because you enjoy something on a surface level. It's like Johnny Depp being a guitar player in a band. I don't even remember the band's name. I know he's good, okay? But he left a mark as an actor. But as a guitar player, I'm not sure he can innovate more than John Mayer. I think that the artistic direction of a brand it should be more than someone's side project, side hustle, especially when they're not trained to be designers. Look at how many designers cracked from the immense pressure, like Alexander McQueen, Tom Ford, and so many more. I don't know if he can do it with his full-time rap career on the side. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. And of course, let me know what you thought about the episode. If you really liked it, hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends. Until next time, see ya!